broadcast to make this
I
work.
mean, if I'm the one starting the meeting, then I can share a screen up here. Can I then do it from my office?
Yes, you can then share from your office, yes.
Does that allow everybody to share a screen?
Well, so I guess it isn't helping me here because there's nobody else on here. But normally there's a thing here on the share screen. Oh, I can do this. Wait. I'll do this. That's easy enough. There's normally something that says like allow participants to share screen. 857. You ready for your meeting tonight?
Is that a trick question? I always enjoy getting beat up. I go home and have a couple stiff drinks.
Yeah. Did I not enter it right? What?
I hope that you don't take offense at my comments, but I just wish that they all exercise a little common sense. I mean, I'm totally on board with the sentiments and all that stuff. I mean, really, it seems like everybody wants to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, I think that all the people who are on boards and commissions, and particularly on council, need like a session on what they can actually do. Like what you have control over, what you don't have control over. Oh, I'm talking.
If you like me, I don't want to hear myself.
But you know what I mean? Like I think they all kind of are, they don't exactly know. Like they all come in thinking, oh, I can change this and this and this. And you're like, you can't really. Okay, so, oh, I don't want to share. I want to make other people share. That's not what it normally looks like. We're in the wrong place. Well, I can at least do this. So when you pull up their participants, so this computer is always the Webster Groves host. And then attendees would be anybody who's watching who isn't appearing on the screen.
Right, I got that.
But you can make them panelists. And then once you make someone a panelist, you can make them a co-host also. So like every meeting that the mayor does, I have to drag her in from the attendees side because she loses the participant link and just comes to the attendee side.
So if I start the meeting up here, go downstairs and sign in, I can make myself a co-host downstairs so I can do this.
You can make yourself a we would start it up here. You would go downstairs and sign in. We can make you a co-host from up here.
Okay, and so then I could do what you're doing here downstairs.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then you also have to come down here to these little dots. I'm going to try to do some instructions where I take pictures of things because there's a lot. You have to allow panelists to start video so that they can have their video up. Otherwise, I didn't do it either. What the heck? I turned the video on.
Are we going to be able to have the meeting tonight?
Yeah, we're going to be able to have the meeting tonight. I'm just confused as to why this isn't letting us share the screen. But essentially what I would like for you to be able to do tonight is when you come up here, I'm gonna have all the sound and stuff off and have this on a not picture. But if you can you'll hit end and it'll say end meeting for all and
that's all.
You'll just click that, yeah. Okay. And then that'll make it so that, yeah, that'll make it so that it's not recording all night. And I don't get in trouble again.
When I start with, is there a sign on for this laptop?
No, it just signs on like automatically. It just enters.
So in other words, when I come up here, I don't have to sign on to it. I just go into the
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But when you do it tonight, you'll just have to, it'll open up and you'll just end it.
That part, yeah, I can do that.
Gotcha.
I can hit the end button.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to mess around with the settings here to make sure that we can.
Can you start it at any time and just not bring people on until the actual starting time of
Correct.
the meeting?
Yeah.
Because what I will do the first time is come up and try and start it myself.
Yeah.
While you are still here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I know you walking me through it will help me, but it probably will not be.
Yeah, no, I mean, what was it the other night? They were like, Jennifer needs to make it so that we can start our videos. And I was like, I'm gonna have to do some searching. Do you have stuff to share too?
I have stuff that I may share. So
Okay.
those things where I have things, it depends on how the meeting goes.
Mm-hmm.
I may want to share them or I may just not.
Okay.
My guess is yes, especially on the racial profile stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll try to figure this out.
All right.
But I think you're good. You can
Okay.
go.
Very good. Like I said, the next one, I'll come up while you're still here.
All
I'll
right.
start the meeting, and then when I run into trouble, I'll call and say, hey.
Sounds perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
See ya. Ah, ha, ha.
Good. The next item on the agenda is the review and approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. And I do have some corrections. For me to go ahead and go through mine.
Sure.
Okay. So on agenda item 7, on the review of use of force policy, we also discussed the use of de-escalation techniques. And Chief Curtis indicated that some additional language was added to a particular policy to clarify that de-escalation process. Is that correct, Dale?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually for use of force, but it could be, I mean, you can frame it as de-escalation.
Right. So you got that, Aaron? Aaron's muted, so.
Yeah, I've got it.
You got it? Okay. The second one is on agenda item 8, the action items. There's an adjourned at 7:35 p.m.
Yeah, that's going to show up on a couple of them. It's not
Okay.
in there
Yeah.
anymore.
That action item should be replaced with, I was to make revisions to the condemnation statement as approved by the board and email out for final review and dissemination. And the next one on agenda item 10, on next steps, I was to send updated, so Kevin was to send updated survey to discuss at the next meeting and resend the list of community groups. And those are all the changes that I have.
Got it.
Got it?
Eric's here now, just by the way.
Oh, I see. Hi, Eric. You had a quick meeting.
Oh, no, my meeting just started also, so I'm in 2 meetings at once.
You're multitasking.
I am. You all forgive me.
That's fine. So we had some corrections to the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve them as corrected?
So moved.
Who was that? Was that Dr. Grouch?
Yeah.
Seconded.
John Thomas seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Okay, the minutes are approved. We have with us today Neil Brentrenger, our city attorney, and he is going to discuss to make sure that we stay on the up and up regarding the Sunshine Law. And after his presentation, I do have a few particular questions.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I forwarded to Katie, and I believe that she sent to all of you a brief summary of the Sunshine Law and the things, and primarily how it applies to emails. And so there was a question that was raised to me in the scheme of things that said basically, what are the requirements, what are the obligations regarding emails? Individual emails that are sent between commission members or employees or anyone who is part of a commission or a board or a council, individual emails that are sent to another member are not something that the Sunshine Law or the record retention rules require us to save. But once an email gets forwarded to more than one other commission member, it then becomes part of what we call the daisy chain. And you then have to be concerned about saving those emails and making sure that they get appropriately archived. Now, why do we do that? The whole idea behind Sunshine and the record retention rules is that they're trying to make government more transparent. So it's the sort of thing where if there are decisions that are being made based on information that's being exchanged between parties, and again, let's say commission member number 1 sends it to 2, 2 likes it, she sends it to 3, 3 likes it, he sends it to 4, 4 likes it, they send to 5. Now we've got 5 commission members that have all weighed in on the same topic, maybe have commented on the topic. That becomes a public record at that point. And what I'm suggesting that you do is, again, I'm not suggesting not communicate by email because that simply wouldn't be realistic. But if you are going to send around emails that are going to be exchanged between you and are going to become the subject of conversation between you, you should probably include Katie on the email or Jennifer on the email so that it can be appropriately archived. And again, the idea behind this is if you're talking about things in advance of a vote and the vote is later taken and people want to talk about why that happened on a sunshine request, they can request those emails, they can look at those, and that conversation, which is supposed to be open and transparent, is then available to them. So again, we think of emails as private. They're not, particularly when we are using emails in regard to a commission. They are documents that might be necessary to capture under both the Sunshine Law and the record retention rules. Now, I included in my letter to you a description of the record retention rules, which are under Chapter 109, and a brief recitation under 610. In looking at your agenda, there are several other items that also get affected by the Sunshine Law. Again, social media posts, responses in general, whether those have to be preserved or not, those sorts of things might be affected. But I tell you this because the simple rule is write every email like you expect someone to read it, someone other than just the person to whom it is addressed. That way you are complying with both the spirit and the letter of the Sunshine and the record retention laws, and include Katie on those. Now, there are 3 types of emails once they get sent. There are those that we don't have to keep because they're not necessarily pertinent to anything. There are those that we might have to keep for a year. And there are those that might reflect the formation of policy and ultimate decision-making that we have to keep forever. You all don't have to make that decision. So err on the side of caution, err on the side of transparency, include Katie in these emails, and we're simply going to archive them. We'll review them, decide what we have to keep, what we don't, and dump them. It's as simple as that, and sometimes as hard as that. Now you say to yourself, well, gee, how do we have those quiet, meaningful conversations that perhaps need to be off the record? Have them with just one member. But again, now we're just having a conversation. What if that one member says, you know what, I got a lot of good information from number 1, and she decides to contact number 3. And number 3 says, that's great, and we're sharing information back and forth. Are you still within the spirit of the law? Well, in terms of record retention, you are, because that's not a record. But again, in terms of making sure that your communications and your conversations and those things that would be part of your decision-making are transparent, perhaps you're not. There are rules why we say that if you're getting together in groups of more than a quorum or more, we have to post those as meetings if we're going to talk about business. And again, that's to make it transparent. The simple rule is that if you're going to have a single conversation, make it a single conversation. If it's going to be a conversation you're asking someone to pass on, then memorialize it, put it in an email, and communicate that way. Again, I'm not trying to make life harder. In fact, I'm trying to make life easier, but I'm really trying to make sure that we are complying with the Sunshine Law. Questions?
I do have a question. So, over the last, month or so, month and a half or so, there's been a lot of inquiries that have come in, and they've come into me as chairperson. They've come into Chief Curtis. He's responded, and because I want to keep the board informed, I will then forward that information to all board members. I have not been copying Katie, so do I need to go back? Should I go back and pull those emails up and just send her copies? Or Dale, do you copy her?
I have not copied Katie. I've only communicated basically with you. I'm not sure everything that you've shared, but
Okay.
our emails are archived for a year automatically. But it's still, as Neil said, it still would be a good idea for her to be aware of it and pay attention to what we retain.
So again, the record retention rules say some records can be dumped right away, some have to be retained for a year, and other ones have to be retained forever. So in a social media request like that, Scott, I would say to you, do what you're doing, just add Katie on there. Again, what you're trying to do is just what the Sunshine Law wants you to do. Share the information, make sure everybody's on the same page, everyone knows the questions that were asked, and then we retain those. Now, again, these are the sorts of things that we might retain forever, particularly if you're using those as a basis to change your policies and rules and regulations. I think you're going to fit into that third category on those. So again, just doing what you're doing, but adding one more name on there, I think is perfectly appropriate and is the right thing to do.
Okay. That's easy to do because I've got her as my contact anyway in my contact list. So I'll just check that box.
Right. And I would encourage everyone to do that for all of their social media requests. When they respond, simply add Katie's name on there. And again, and if it's pertinent to a particular commission or board that you're on or council that you're on, then include your other council members so everyone knows what it is you're talking about. Again, I'm not trying to inhibit conversation. I'm trying to enhance it. But again, when you're answering and responding in some sort of official capacity, you should let other people know what you're thinking. And I think that's the safest way to do it.
Yeah, these haven't been social media requests. These have actually been physical emails received from those interested in really specific policies within the department.
Right.
And
now,
normally,
I would say
normally what I do with those is because I'm not completely well versed on all policies and procedures of the Webster Groves Police Department, I'll forward those to Dale, Chief Curtis, and then he will respond appropriately. And then I want to make sure that all the board members are informed of that. So I will then in turn forward that information to them so they are well informed. So they're a well informed board.
And I think that's a great idea. Now, one other thing that I have recommended that people do who are members of the commission is create a specific email for that commission. That makes the emails easy to find that are related to this business. And again, it's go to Gmail, just come up with a new one.
We have done that already.
Good. Then again, that becomes very easy to identify what those are. And if you have to go back and add Katie's name to them, you've got those in a position where you can access them and you can forward them on.
Yeah, we've done that already. I think most members have.
Good.
But I would strongly urge that if you haven't, go ahead and do that. And it's real easy. Like, you know, my email has been out there. It's on the agenda for the board actually. So,
one other thing, there will be times when you will get troubling emails and sometimes you will even get threatening emails. In a circumstance like that, I would strongly encourage you not to respond, but to forward that to your other board members, your other commission members, and include the chief of police in a situation like that. And I would show, rather than just forwarding it, I would show that you have you've done that with the person that sent it to you. So if someone does that and they see that you are sharing these emails and not keeping them private, I would, again, I think that's a good thing. Now, is that done to threaten or intimidate? No, but it's done to make sure that people understand that if they're going to make threats, that those sorts of things are going to be taken seriously. So don't worry about responding. In fact, I would encourage you not to respond, other than to send them a copy of the forwarded email or include them on the forward and send that on. So don't engage. There's no point in engaging. Again, if they're sending threats by email, there's no point in engaging. So.
Right. Okay. I do have another question. I think you answered it, but I just wanted to clarify. So on a particular subject matter that I am not well versed in, we may have a board member that has a great deal of knowledge on that particular subject. And I know it's going to be a topic of discussion at a future meeting. And I want to essentially pick the person's brain and get as much information as I can, and also ask advice as to whether or not I should send out some information that I have found, whether it's worthwhile for the board to review it. That conversation, whether it be by email or by phone call, does that email need to be saved and or does the phone call need to be recorded?
So I would tell you that all of the emails that you generate as a member of this commission should be saved. Now, again, I'm not telling you that you necessarily have to archive them and put them in a folder. Just don't erase them. And if you've created a new email address for these things, that becomes very easy to do.
Yeah.
If this is a phone call that for whatever reason, it's a private call, and there can be those private calls. So again, if you look at my letter, the whole idea of saving these things is designed if it's going to go to more than one other person. So if you're doing what you've described, Kevin, and I've gone out to, pick your commission member who might be particularly knowledgeable on something and said, hey, I need your input on this. I'm trying to phrase my questions. Help me out with this. You don't have to necessarily share that. Again, if you then decide that you want to share it, if you've saved it, or if you've simply not erased it, later on you can share it. But again, the safe way to approach that is simply don't erase it. Now, again, you can send an individual email, and there will be times when it's prudent and important because you're trying to narrow your thoughts or form your thoughts to maybe just communicate with one person, okay?
Right.
Now, in terms of phone calls, once you start recording phone calls, I'd say it's problematic. I would say the better approach to something like that is if you have a phone call with somebody, is to send them an email after the fact, say, I appreciate your phone call of this date, and here's a short memorialization of what we said. And now you haven't recorded the phone call, but you have acknowledged the fact that such a phone call occurred. Do you have to send that on to Katie? No, you don't. Not yet, okay? But again, save it. That's the best approach. If it becomes a question, it's available. You've got it. You've memorialized it.
Right.
I'm trying to make work. Again, this is just, it's a good common sense approach. Now, you pick up the phone because you just want to have a quick conversation. Hey, I just want to clarify something you said. I want to make sure I've got this. I'm thinking about this. Do I put that in an email? Probably not.
Okay.
Okay.
And normally what happens when I get a response back and they provide me the information, then I'll forward that information on to the rest of the board anyway. So that particular email, and usually what happens when I respond, that the entire trail of emails is in the single
Connected.
connected. So,
Yeah, I get it.
So,
and again, this is not designed to make work, but it is designed to recognize that you guys have an obligation to make these things available under some circumstances, or actually under most circumstances.
yeah, because we're going to be contacting the leaders of various community groups to try to set up engagement meetings with those groups. And then it will most likely start out with a phone call. And then I guess the best approach would be then follow it up with an email and copy Katie on those emails.
That would certainly be the best. In my world, that would be wonderful.
Okay. And one of the other items is if I know a particular community member that's not on the board has a great deal of knowledge on a particular subject, and I reach out to that individual, and then they provide me the information I requested, and then I forward that information on to the rest of the board, or it becomes an agenda item that we then discuss. Does that meet the spirit of transparency?
It does.
Okay. Okay. Those are my questions. The final, actually, I do have one more. Can the group, as a group, engage in training without it being an open meeting or forum?
Yes. So in those circumstances, I would still say that we would post it, but indicate that it is not an open meeting. But again, it's training. I mean, the whole idea here is to make you a better commission member. So in those circumstances, you can do it, but that does not have to be in a public forum. However, erring on the side of caution, I'd say we put it on our board that says you're getting that training. And that way the public knows you're getting the training, which I think is also beneficial.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
I just have one clarification. I think that would help. You know, one of the agenda items on here is how to respond to social media posts. And I think we need perhaps the legal advice to understand how we respond as an individual and how we respond as a member of a board. And that, you know, we face that all the time with council members. How do you respond as an individual versus are you really representing the viewpoint of the board? And
So a lot of that comes down to which email you're using in response. So, and if you're not using email, it depends on how you respond. Anytime that a commission member or a board member makes a representation that they're responding as a commissioner or board member, you are now, whether you're justified in doing so, you are now representing the board. And you have to be very, very careful in that regard because no one of you is the board or council. You are all collectively the board or council. So any decision about a representation as a commissioner or board member really has to be a group decision, all right? So I would encourage you very strongly not to respond ever as a member or as a commission member of the PCEB. Now, what happens when the question comes to you is that you can differentiate that. You can say, I'm not responding as a council or a board member. I'm responding to you personally. If you're doing that by email, use your personal email address. Do not use your email address that would be related to this. If you're on Twitter, if you're on any other platform that has an identifying marker feature on it, make sure that whatever responses you give are in your own name. By being a member of this commission or this board, you don't have an obligation to give up your personal opinion. You have a right to it. But you have to be very careful not to represent that your opinion is that of your other commission members.
Thanks.
Does that make sense, Mayor? Does that address it?
Yeah.
If a particular member has I don't know how to, if they see those posts and it's very bothering to them, how should that be addressed?
So when you say it's bothering to them, tell me what you mean by that, Kevin.
Well, I don't know because I don't go out and look for it. let me put it that way.
You know what? Neither do I, but it seems to find me. All right. So again, what that means is that if someone gets an email that is problematic and they feel like they need to acknowledge, but aren't quite sure how to do that, then simply refer it on to the entire board or commission and say to the person that sent it, that's a great question. I'm going to forward this to the board or commission, and we're going to take this up at our first opportunity. You've acknowledged the receipt of it now. You've indicated its importance or significance to you, and you've given it to the commission or board, which is what you're supposed to do.
Neil, if I can just interject,
Yes,
I think what Kevin's referring to, and Kevin, you correct me if I'm wrong, is not emails on social posts, but actual social posts. And the reason I say that is we do monitor, as we mentioned before, we do monitor social media, Facebook, Twitter, those kind of things. I on occasion see things that disturb me. And I'll just give you, in general, I think it's probably a couple of weeks ago on a Facebook post where there were several people discussing stops of Black minority teenagers, and they felt they were being harassed. Whenever we see those kind of things, I can't really respond to them, and we're not going to respond to them when they're on a board like that. But what we'll do is we will go and check our logs. And again, in this case, we could find nothing remotely close to what they were discussing. We have the body cameras and the in-vehicle cameras, but we can't respond to that. And I think what Kevin's talking about is probably some of the board members see those kind of things as well, and wants to know how is there a way to address them other than to ignoring them?
So the answer is yes, but going back to Kevin, if that adequately explains what it was you're talking about, if it's a topic that you as a commission member think is relevant to what you as a commission are doing, then you should forward it on to the other commission members and say, this is something we need to talk about. I would tell you that if you are going to respond to the post itself and to the person that wrote it or a comment within it, be very careful about how you do that, because again, people know that you're a member of this commission. And so it comes down to a situation where, you simply have to be careful about how you respond. Now, does that mean that you can't express your opinion freely? It does not. I'm simply saying, make sure that people understand it's your opinion and you're only speaking for you.
Yeah, generally, I don't follow it. So, but generally that's what I've always done with emails.
Mhm.
Is I've always forwarded those to the other board members. And sometimes I don't forward the information until I get a response from primarily Chief Curtis on a specific inquiry that we might be getting. And then I will respond to all the board members with the entire chain of emails so that everyone knows they can read the entire chain of emails to find out, okay, who made the inquiry, why was it made, and what information was presented back to those individuals.
Right,
and I think to respond myself because, again, I'm not the expert. I'm the volunteer board member.
Right, I get it. And again, I think that that's the way to do it, is address it as a commission. I mean, you can certainly form opinions, but you have an unparalleled opportunity here, and that is that you can do just that. You can reach out and gather the information and be able to respond to it knowingly in the context of these commission meetings, which is why you have this commission.
Right.
Scott,
And we've kind of
Scott's trying to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted a quick question. If we go to these various community meetings or start talking to various groups, and by definition, we're representing the entire board, even if just one or two of us go, is it then advised that we summarize anything discussed there and then create an email to the board and copy Katie, for example?
It's certainly not mandatory. Nothing in 610 and nothing in 109 mandates that you create a document, okay? It might be useful just so that your fellow commission members know what it was that was talked about. But again, I'm not trying to make homework for you. What you're asking me is that is it good to share the information? I think that's always good.
Sure.
Okay, so again, I wouldn't mandate it, but the flip side of it is it sure doesn't hurt. And if you do that, I would say send it to everybody and then it gets saved. And then there's no question about what was talked about. And you can go to those meetings. If somebody says to you, Scott, I want your opinion on something, you can say, I'm going to give you my personal opinion on this. And again, it's personal to you. You have an absolute right to do that. And again, nothing about what I'm talking about inhibits or restricts your ability to do that as long as it's crystal clear you're speaking for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is a Neil question or for my fellow board members, but one of the things that came up on social media after our last meeting, because I follow some of the boards, was how do we get a hold of the PCEB? And Kevin's email was put out there on that Facebook page. And then I also just said, I'm also on the board, here is my email. With no, this is what the board thinks, or this is what my opinion is. That's okay, right? To do, and are other board members okay with that?
That is okay, and that's spot on. And what you're doing there is you're making sure that people know if they have questions, how to pose those questions to people that can answer them. So no, you're spot on.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's not on this particular agenda. We kind of actually skipped down to agenda item 6. And so I wanna kind of circle back to agenda item 5 once we're done discussing this particular topic. But that's one thing that I think we've discussed in the past on emails, since we have individual emails. As the chairperson, my email is all out there. My kspceb@gmail.com email is out there. And I certainly don't mind, but sometimes if I get barraged with emails, I feel as if I want, my philosophy has always been respond as quickly as I possibly can. And then, but again, this is a volunteer endeavor. So sometimes it's difficult to get a response back as quickly as I would like to.
No, I understand. And again, I think the idea of forwarding this on to your commission as a whole is probably the single best response, saying we're going to take a look at these things. Now, again, there will be times, there will be events that will cause greater inquiry, and you'll get more emails than others.
Right.
Those are the hard times, but I think you can kind of get to the gist of it. You know what the issues are. And again, you can sort of create a canned email that says, I understand, I've received this, and I'm going to forward it to the other our commission members. You can set that up sort of as an automatic response. And I'm not saying that we don't give that full consideration. I mean, obviously you need to, but if you've gotten 500 emails in a particular day, those are hard to respond to, particularly on an individual basis. So, I mean, sometimes you can set up an automatic response that says, you know, I've received your email. It may take me some time to get back to you. You know, thanks for your interest type thing.
Yeah, generally that's what I've done, and I've actually indicated who specifically who I forwarded it to in my response.
Can't ask for more than that, Kevin.
So, but okay. Jean, does that, because you had requested that this item actually be put on the agenda. Does that kind of answer your question about how we should do that? So if you see something that's you feel is either wrong or inaccurate, Dale, do you have a problem with Jean just forwarding that information to you that it's out there?
I don't have an issue with any board member or anyone else for that matter. Either sending me the email or calling me by phone, and like I said, we'll check on it. On occasion, we see the post on social media, and if it's something that looks disturbing or something that doesn't look right, with knowing that we're not going to respond to the individual or satisfy what's going on social media, we still want to make sure that we're not having issues. So we will always check on those things to see if we can find out where it was at and document it and see if it's a problem. Like I said, in many cases, for instance, the last one was a couple of weeks ago, it was very concerning. We did a 2-week span around when they say it occurred, and there's no record. So unfortunately, we can't respond on social media. We can't provide really information that way. But we are more than willing to look into any complaint or any concern from the board or for anyone else that has a concern about something they see in social media or that someone's talking about.
I mean, would that be a situation maybe where you would contact the board to figure out how to possibly respond? Like, at least direct, like, post in the comments and direct them to the PCE board about, like, you know, if you'd like to be on the next, you know, part of the next meeting or call or whatever, here's the information or here's the website information, just to, like, instead of it, I guess my concern is just having it hang out there and you guys see it. You probably see more than we do, or I do, because you monitor it, but I don't look for these things, but they pop up every once in a while where I'm just, I don't ever like actually respond, but I keep thinking it would be nice if there was some sort of, you know, how these posts go, they'll get into hundreds and hundreds of comments and everybody just keeps piling on. And it's like a, you know, like there was actually one in June where they actually discussed the PCB. And then, you know, there's a little bit of a back and forth about, oh, it's just a PR thing for the police department. And, you know, it's basically, you know, and so it's like, it'd be great to have some sort of like response, like, hey, this is the PCEB, you know, if you want to find out more about it, or if you have an issue to bring up, contact us here, you know, on the website, or, you know, like just something, because otherwise it just hangs out there and we never, like, a lot of people don't even know where to go with their concerns. They don't know we exist necessarily. So
Can I chime in a quick sec?
Sure, go ahead.
I would love to talk about this more, because like my personal opinion is that even if there are hundreds of negative comments about us, or even, you know, disparaging comments, that's people's right to say that. And I do agree that, you know, it would be positive to be able to say, like, hey, we welcome you to join our meetings, see what we're really about. But I don't really mind the negative comments, because I feel like people are upset, and it's good for us to not just have like the positive about what we're doing. It's good to, I guess, I feel like it's good to know how we're perceived in the community.
Yeah, I'd also want to add to that it would be nice to get almost an update of what is circulating out there, what has concerned you, Chief, and then as a board, have it as a regular agenda item that we discuss and come up with that response.
Yeah, I have no problem with the board creating some kind of mechanism if you'd like. It's just, it's very difficult. And I also think it's counterproductive to try and combat those things in social media itself, because it often has a life of its own. I mean, some of it is legitimate, but it often spirals off into things that are not. And the example is the criticism of the PCEB. I mean, as you all know, it's not this, I would hope that you feel it and know at this point, it's not a PR mechanism. You know, we're trying to do good work. We're trying to be transparent and do things that are positive. So if there's a way to maybe try and put things out that are related to social media posts, I mean, I'm fine with that. It's just that my own opinion, especially for us at the police department, it's counterproductive to try and combat that in any way on the social media or even on our own Facebook page, because I don't think it would get a lot of attention. And just like Katie said, people are entitled to have opinions and state their opinions. It's the good and bad about social media. So I don't want to disparage them. I don't want to try and have us combat things too much. But as far as things that are concerning, I'm more than open to trying to bring them to people's attention and discuss them. Or if there's a mechanism that the board has that they want to try and address it, I mean, I'm fine with that as well.
Well, depending on how many there are out there, I mean, you could spend all day just responding to social media chatter. I mean, if
you see something, could you at least put in a link to, our Facebook or the PCB not Facebook website page, where hopefully it'll become more populated with information about what we're doing and where they could contact us, or just something so that the community in general engages on social media probably more than anything else. And so if we're kind of a community engagement board, I don't think we want to completely discount social media, because that's where a lot of conversations happen. And that's where we could kind of get the pulse of what is going on in the community and what things that we should be addressing as a board. But without getting into like monitoring and like responding to every possible, complaint about anything.
Yeah, I mean,
but
the problem is, which one do you respond to and which one do you not? So then all of a sudden you're picking and choosing who you're responding to.
Can I step in real quick and just say what we do like on our city stuff?
Sure.
Whenever we get something, I mean, it's pretty rare that we get that many comments, but whenever we do get something that's like maybe a little combative or some sort of something that I wouldn't just ignore, because some things, I'm not going to argue with somebody, but if it's something where somebody asks a question or has something, a lot of times I won't reply to anyone. I will just put another response, like just put another comment, just have something like what you were saying, Jean, like, please see this website here or whatever. I just think if you guys get involved in too much of the back and forth with people, it doesn't go down a good path for anyone.
No, I wouldn't respond to like a person directly. I would just, in a comment thread, I would just maybe post like, hey, if you're interested in learning more about the PCB, here's a link, and just like kind of not get into like what the discussion is even about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just something so that it just doesn't, that we're not engaged in the social media aspect of the community, because it really, like I said, more and more, that's where people talk.
Yeah. A lot of people aren't on all the pages, though. I mean, I know most city employees were kicked off of the community connection.
Well, I mean, and I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to monitor them, but if I see something, I'll post it, but I'm not going to like go searching for things, I guess, Jean, I
don't really, and the other board members can chime in on this. I really don't have an issue if you feel as if, something gets posted and you want to direct them to the Police Community Engagement Board landing page, where they can review the minutes of the prior meetings. They can look at the policies of the police department that have been posted on the webpage, which they're out there. There's a link to the actual police department webpage where they can actually file a complaint. There's individuals listed who they can contact. So I really don't have, unless the other board members, disagree with me, I don't have an issue with just posting a general link for people to go to access information. And also the webpage as to when our meetings are, because those get posted on the calendar. And if the people are interested, then they can join in with the meetings. I mean, we have roughly 24 participants right now that are participating in the meeting. So,
it's making me think this is a brainstorming idea, so it could be totally bad. But how do you feel about, like, I could post on my personal Facebook, hey, I'm on the PCEB. Here's our next meeting. Here's the Zoom link the day before. And we could, if whoever wanted to participate that way, could make that personal connection. I think that there's like the two questions to me are like accessibility and privacy. And then, I don't know, like what's the good or value of that, but just kind of in the spirit of what we're talking about. Does anybody have thoughts on that?
Can I chime in on a thoughtful note on that?
Yeah.
If I may, how do you, in terms of your Facebook page, how do you have your privacy settings set now?
Just friends can see what I.
So only friends would be able to see that. But right now, what you do have as a huge portal is the Webster Groves website. The PCEB has been the conversation since it's been formed. It has been referenced any number of times in the Webster Kirkwood Times, God rest its soul, and in any number of these various groups that are posting, these community groups that are posting, of which surprisingly I'm a member and have not been kicked off. So I will tell you that there are lots of conversations in those about these things, but there is also a lot of reference to the existence of this board. So I don't think there's a question about whether it exists. People can access it if they want to, but for so many of these people, that's not their purpose. Okay, and I'm not trying to be derogatory regarding people who post, but there are folks who, in some ways, are willfully ignorant and just simply don't want the answers. So I think it's great that you guys are trying to get the word out, but I think what you're doing now is the best way to do it, which is to create a website, give accessibility through the website. Kevin has indicated that his email address is out there. If people have questions, people know how to do this. And in the end, if I don't know how to use my various platforms, I can call City Hall and say, how do I get a message to the PCEB? And they'll answer the phone and they'll tell you how to do it. So again, I think the more people you can reach, the better, but I'm not sure that the community connects are necessarily that place. And again, I'm not trying to be disparaging. I'm simply telling you that if it looks like you're hunting these things down, people will accuse you of trolling it. So again, it's the sort of thing where if you find out about it and want to do it, I would say at a minimum, post the PCEB website link and leave it there. But I would be very interested in then looking to see how that's responded to. I mean, just from a social experiment, I would be interested in seeing that. But right now, if you look at your list of attendees, you had a whole lot of people that are very active on social media in Webster Groves. And so again, the word is out there. People know you are there. People who write very often on those sites know you are there. So again, do what you're doing. Make it transparent. Make it something that is accepting and open to inquiries. If people want to come and have conversations, what more can you do than that? Just one man's opinion.
Okay. Any other? Again, I didn't hear an affirmative. Do any of the board members have any issues with Jean or whomever, Katie, posting just a general post to say, here's the website where you can access information or make inquiries?
I think that's a good idea.
Can Jennifer weigh in here?
What's that?
Yeah.
Does this sound like something that you'd work with all the time where you would be?
Yeah. I mean, we're fortunate that we don't have very many comments and I can't see the other stuff, so I don't have to worry about it. So yes, I always post links to the website on the Facebook when I can, because I want to drive people to that, because I think that that's an important first choice for them to have. We do the Police Community Engagement Board page, which we'll talk about later, but we're going to work on some more, and that does have that information on there, is webstergroves.org/PCEB. So I do have that hooked up so that there's a redirect, just as a FYI if you're posting things. Although Facebook does not like redirects, so you might have to grab the link.
Thanks, Jen.
Okay. Let's back up to agenda item 5, which was sharing the PCEB letter of condemnation other than on the web page. Katie, you requested this be placed on the agenda. You still with us?
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's item number 5, the sharing the letter other places.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that seems like a long time ago that I made that request. Yeah, I mean, I don't think
it was about probably 3 weeks ago.
I know. I think that it kind of ties back to what we were talking about social media posts, in the sense of like some kind of, maybe this is a long-term goal, but some kind of agility for our group in being able to reach more citizens of Webster Groves in more different ways. So I'm not sure that it's incredibly pertinent right now, but maybe just as a long-term thought, like how can we be more agile in sharing this? Because I do think that people would like to read this letter, for example, and I don't know, maybe I was even thinking at the time about the Webster Kirkwood Times online. Maybe there are other ways that other people could think of that we could share it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not secret that it's there,
But I will say though that I guess that I wonder, but I don't know if this is true. And again, it could tie into other things like us getting out to the community and asking community members, like what, making people work for something versus just like bringing it to them. What's the difference in how they receive it? So I guess I'm asking a question, and I would tend to think that if we are more accessible and more and less like like come and get it if you're willing to, I feel like it could be a,
You're muted again.
oh sorry, I think it could be a good rapport builder in the community for us in the community.
Right.
I'm happy to speak to that a little bit, because I think we're having a difficult time figuring out how to reach people in general now. The Webster Kirkwood Times was such an important vehicle for us, and without it, we're really kind of struggling. I mean, tomorrow night we have this huge town hall meeting about that big development, and how do we get the word out? All we really have, we have the website. We actually resorted this weekend to hanging door hangers up on the homes around the redevelopment area, because it's just really difficult. We can mail things out, but boy, when you're doing a mailing, you're talking about thousands of dollars. So we're really struggling with that. So if anybody thinks of any way that we as a city can get the word out there better, boy, let us know.
How many, I mean, this is a little bit about that. How many subscribers to the Friday page do you have?
Not as many as we'd like. I think there's like 150.
Yeah.
But we post it everywhere. Like I put it on the Facebook, and I put it on, it's on the front page, and it's in places like that. So.
Right.
Yeah, we had hopes of thousands of people subscribing to the Friday page, but we're not there.
I wasn't sure about that.
I think it's an important subject to try to figure out how we can do that. And the other thing is, as we start meeting with meeting with the community groups, which is a later topic on the agenda, but this COVID-19 thing has really interrupted a lot of things.
Yeah.
As far as being able to really engage with the number of people that we wanted to engage with by now. So, but yeah, Katie, let's put that on the next agenda too, to try to even if we said, no, we can't think of anything at this point, but we keep thinking about it and we might be able to find a solution. And
real quick, I did see, I was looking through the old Friday pages. It was on the June 19th issue. Just so, you know.
Okay.
Is there a way to one-way push the information to the main social media websites without engaging in the back and forth, but just say, this is happening?
Scott, do you mean the Community Connect groups?
Yeah, without getting into that back and forth and debating things.
And I don't know who the administrators are necessarily, but of course, the administrators have the ability to approve or disapprove what gets posted. And anything you post there has to be in your individual name, which is fine. But the answer is you can do it. You just have to let the administrators know you're doing it. I guess just by posting it, you would do that. But again, you're doing that in your own name under your own account. And some people may not want that sort of scrutiny on their Facebook page. Now, again, if your privacy settings are set in such a way that you're not opening yourself up to being trolled or that sort of thing, then it's safe enough. But recognize that there are implications or perhaps consequences of that sort of getting out in front of it.
Right. Okay. We've got a lot more agenda items to go through,
Yeah,
and
we do.
we're almost an hour, so I want to go ahead and try to move on. Jennifer, I know that you want to talk a little bit about the PCEB webpage.
Yeah.
And there's several ways you can access it. The way I went and accessed is I went to our government boards and commissions.
Yeah.
Community engagement board, and it's right there.
Yeah, that's the way that most boards have access. But I did make a link specifically for you guys. I can't remember if I put you guys on the police page or not, but I can certainly, connect it on the side. The menu on the side is like affiliate pages. And so on the side of your page, there's the police department and the different
right. The links
policies.
right now on the left side of the page are the statement on use of force, the police department, police policies, which I think there's 3 policies that are out there that talk about the use of force and the de-escalation, and I think there's one other. And then the police department accreditation for Kalea. That's out there as a link on the left-hand side of the webpage.
Yeah.
So on the right-hand side, you have the enacting ordinance, the meetings and members, which I want to discuss, how much information should we post out there in that section. As far as contact, right now, questions or comments to the board go through Dale.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it is on every other board. They go through the staff liaison.
Okay.
So,
And I don't really have an issue with that because Dale always informs me when he gets something. So.
I mean, I do that because, we're not always informed when when there's a chair or when things like that happen. So it's just for consistency's sake, it's easier to keep it as the staff liaison.
Right. And then what information do you suggest under meetings and members? The commission right now, it just says it's made up of 7 members plus a youth liaison.
Yeah, that's what I've had on all the other boards is just we have, what exactly they're made up of. Some of them, it's like a representative from whatever. And then when they meet, but you guys don't have necessarily a regular meeting date. So it just says they meet monthly.
Right. Well,
we can put a link to a roster or, your names or whatever if you'd like them there. We just haven't before, but I can.
Okay. Board members, why don't you think about that, and we can discuss at the next meeting whether or not we want to add that information or not.
But I definitely think, you know, information, right now it's just like a page of just words. Like we can break this up into other pages. You guys can have a sub page that's some of this stuff, just so it's not like just scrolling. I don't know if there's anything of like visual interest that we could do. I think I talked to Katie and we added the, Katie on your board, not my Katie. And we added the public records request in there to have as that kind of thing for people if they're looking for something. Let's see. We can do a feedback form. Like we create forms on there. All of our forms that are normally on the website are created in-house. So we could do like a feedback form or a survey or whatever it is and have that somewhere. I can link to the police department survey. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of pretty much, I'm not going to say whatever you want, but it's.
I think this would be a good place for our survey once we finally get it finalized. But as well as, you know, presenting it to the community groups during our engagement activities. But I think the link to the police survey would be an important link to have too. It's very clear that this is what it is, and this is what it's for.
Alrighty, got that.
And then as we come up with additional ideas on things that we can post on this website, we can then, I think, better direct people to the information. I mean, and it's going to change. I mean, the information is really the needs of the community change depending on really what's happening all around us. So I think it's important for us to be able to respond to that, and we can respond to it by putting the information on the website and direct people there rather than sending a long drawn out response to individuals.
Yeah, I think that's a good objective to have on that. I think that getting people just to go to the website and making sure you have the stuff and have it up to date. I try to go through as many pages as possible to make sure things are up to date, but anyone who can tell me that stuff is out of date or, you know, needs replacing and things like that is very helpful.
I know that initially Katie and Jean were working with you to get this up and running, and with Mayor Welch. Can you guys continue to work together to come up with some information that might be helpful to share with the public, so we can, and once it's out there, then when I respond to a particular email, and always copy Katie on it, the other Katie, the city Katie, that I can direct people to the website so they're getting very current information.
Yeah, I'm happy, and I can, you know, we can do a phone call or something with Katie and Jean, and we could talk about, you know, different design type things, how we can make it look nicer, or do whatever. So yeah.
Would you guys be, Katie and Jean, would you guys be okay with that?
Yeah, I'm definitely, I can help with any sort of graphics that you might, I mean, as a graphic designer by trade, you know, I could maybe try to liven up the page that's a bunch of text with maybe a graph or a chart or, you know, something here and there, and could certainly review copy and things like that as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm welcome. I'm just at your disposal. So whatever you need, just let me know.
Okay, great.
Awesome. All right, the next item on the agenda is actually we received a request from an individual that wanted to know what the historical information available on any complaints. I know that we've had, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know, Dale, it's been over 131,000 calls over the last 5 years. and we've had 28 complaints, and 2 were sustained.
That's correct. I actually did an update. The 5-year period there was from, I believe, 2012 to 2015. I've updated it for like the last 7.5, almost 8 years. We had about 233,000 calls for service, and of those 233,000 calls for service, we've had 32 complaints. We haven't had any complaints this year.
And I guess the question that was actually sent to Katie. Katie, could you explain what the question was? You're muted.
I have a dog and 2 kids, so I'm always making sure to mute, but then there's a problem. So, okay. So this is what the question was. I'm interested in historic complaints to the Webster Groves Police Department. I want to know how I can view past complaints. I want to see if past complaints contain details and evidence, as well as the names of the offending officer and the victimized citizens. If I file a complaint, I want to know how the police would notify me about its progress and how I could appeal the complaint if it wasn't sustained. So this was after one of our community members read an article about another city, and then it raised concerns about our city.
We actually have an abbreviated record as far as the public being able to identify specific officers or specific complainants for that matter. That's not available, and it's not going to be available. They're privacy and personnel issues. But we do have a generic list of the complaints, the dates, what the complaints were, how they were, the disposition, how they were adjudicated, with a brief explanation. We're not going to, we don't provide a full report on the investigations. And I actually, I probably should have emailed those to you before this meeting, but I will get a copy of that to Kevin and have him send it out to the board. It's from 2012 through 2020, and it will show you the complaints, the number of complaints. If a complaint is not sustained or not substantiated and someone still is not satisfied with that, they're welcome to appeal the complaint to the city manager. That rarely happens, especially now. Again, I'm not saying we're perfect. Officers have made mistakes. We have, some of the complaints have been sustained. We've had to do minor discipline because they were minor issues. But we have in-vehicle cameras and we have body cameras. Almost anytime we get a complaint, I shouldn't say almost anytime, actually anytime now we get a complaint, we can go back to the car video or the body cam video and get a pretty accurate record of everything that occurred and make it a disposition based upon reviewing the cameras. As you will see when I send you out the list, since we've gotten the in-car vehicle cameras and now the body cameras, probably 80% of the complaints are adjudicated that way. And when people see the video, they don't, contest it.
Yeah, I think that I don't want to state the obvious, but I think it should be pretty obvious why we wouldn't give the victim's name or the complainant's name or address with especially what's going on within the city of St. Louis right now, as far as giving names and addresses of people that are making complaints. But as far as a record of the complaint itself, Dale, how would a person that is interested in looking at those complaints, where would they go to get that information?
Well, that's something right now that they would have to request. I'm not adverse to putting it online, but I'd have to think pretty long and hard about that. They are personnel issues. If someone has a specific reason or knowledge, I mean, they can file a sunshine complaint request on some of the records and be able to get them. I'm not a real big proponent of putting all the complaints up online. But again, I wouldn't be adverse to it if the community felt that was something that they thought was necessary to do. But it's not going to include the officer's identity nor the complainant's identity.
Right.
And it probably, when you see the nature of most of the complaints, you'll understand it. Really, it's just not a big issue here.
Right. Even if it weren't posted online, I guess my question is if an individual wanted to look at that information, how would they go about that?
They could either contact the police department or
Okay.
they can file a sunshine, as with anything that's a public record, they can file a sunshine request.
Yeah, that's linked on the webpage too, the
That's okay.
document request, yeah.
The other thing where it's available, and it's there are gaps in it. In our accreditation report, we have another assessment coming in November for CALEA. It's
Right.
actually supposed to be the summer, but it got postponed because of COVID. Every assessment report includes the number of complaints, the type of complaints, so anybody could access that report. Generally, we try and have that online. Jennifer, do we have that online?
Yeah, I've got that linked also on the left side there.
So I mean,
And it's on her page and on theirs.
right. That goes back to 2004. I mean, there's a lot of good information there for the public, for anybody that wants to see how we operate, the number of complaints, the number of use of force complaints, you know, in general, an overview of the police department. So the information is available on there. It can be requested. Our sunshine request, they can get the information.
And that's the accreditation link. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay. So it's on the left-hand side. If you scroll down, the police department accreditation, that information will be in that report. Okay. I put this on process for applying for open PCEB position, and I just want to verbally, say how to do it. Okay. So you go to webstergroves.org. Under news and announcements, you click on the view vacancies and the board and commission vacancies.
I think we just took that off, but we do, if you go to the website, you can either go under boards and commissions and go to the application, or you can go to webstergroves.org/board application.
Okay. When did you take that down? I was just there today.
It was today. I was putting other stuff up.
Okay. Repeat that again for all the listeners.
So it's underneath, it's in boards and commissions on the menu, but it's also direct link to the form is webstergroves.org/board application.
Okay.
And then that comes to Katie and I, and
Right.
she contacts them.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And we did have, and I sent this out to all the board, but Chief Curtis responded to a specific inquiry on the updated vehicle stops report, and some things that have changed a little bit. And one of them is the disparity index has actually improved quite a bit. So it went from over 3 down to slightly over 2. And Chief Curtis, could you discuss that just a little bit about why and what actions have been taken really as a result of a PCEB lengthy discussion that we had last year on our concern of the disparity index?
Yeah, I can give you just a second. My light saving mechanism went out here and I don't want to talk in the dark.
Dale, you look better in the dark.
You don't want to wave your arms and make it go back.
I have no doubt about that, but the other problem is I can't see in the dark.
Well, there is that. There he is.
Oh, there, you're back.
I'm sorry. It would probably be helpful if I can share my screen with a PowerPoint presentation. Can I do
Sure.
that?
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, you should be able to if you stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should be able to share now.
All right. One of the first things we talked about was the vehicle stop disparity rate. And as I had related at the time, I thought there was a couple, well, there's more than a couple issues, but a couple of primary issues that we can control was the number of traffic stops on the highway and also our license plate readers. We've got had three license plate readers in service. We still have 2 in service. But we made a commitment to try and reduce the number. Part of that was reducing our enforcement on I-44 and trying to focus more on residential enforcement. That had occurred in June, and we were able to reduce that by about 19% from probably August through January of last year. This year, we've reduced it by 76%. But as an illustration, in 2011 was when we expanded the traffic unit, and there was more enforcement on the highway because of, primarily again, because of grants. But our numbers went up a little bit then. In 2016 is when we implemented the license plate readers. That's when our numbers really jumped up. We added a third LPR in 2017. And as you can see, obviously our numbers were considerably higher. With the reduced traffic enforcement on the highway this year, the number went down to 3.8. More importantly, I think from 2018, when the resident only disparity rate was 3.2, it's reduced to 2.13. I believe the license plate readers have a legitimate law enforcement purpose, but based upon the perception of the community, and again, as I've said many times, we police how the community wants us to police, and what those numbers have come to represent, I think it's more important for us to, at the very least, present a perspective that we're trying to make sure that we're not disparate in our vehicle stops as much as possible. So we've taken one of the license plate readers out of service. At the end of this year, when the contract goes out on the next two, we're not going to renew the contract, so we're going to eliminate those as well. I think by doing that and reducing the enforcement on traffic, it will again reduce our disparity rate next year considerably. If you look at the 10-year history, you can see before we did the expanded traffic unit and did a license plate readers, we were traditionally somewhere between like 1.76 and I think 2.38 was the highest. And a lot of the factors, unfortunately, are socioeconomic, and also there's a lot of transient traffic in this area. So I can't promise you that we're ever going to get the number down to 1, but I do think we could go back to where we were traditionally were in the past with the numbers around 2 and possibly below. But we're making every effort. We do examine our vehicle stops just because the formula is not something that I think works real well. It's not something we discount. So we're doing everything that we can to make sure that our number is something that's acceptable and meet the expectations of the community. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Do any board members have any questions about that? Yeah, I think it's something that we should continue to monitor, and then look at why the stops are being made, which I'm sure you're doing. So based on the detailed report that we discussed last time on the number of the reasons for the stops, then maybe we can continue to monitor this. And I guess my ultimate goal here, maybe I'm idealistic. I want Webster Groves Police Department to be the model police department for all other communities to look at.
Well, the one thing I can't promise, Kevin, to you or anybody else, is that we can get the number down to 1, because there are just too many disparate factors in traffic stops. I mean, the radar units, we can't take those out. I'm sorry, I don't remember the person who asked for this initially, but this is why I had forwarded to you in her response, and why I said we do need to maintain traffic safety for the community.
Right.
And their response was they don't really think that that's a legitimate concern. If they sat at my desk and Captain Perks, who's in charge of the traffic unit, they would understand very quickly that it's a prominent concern with a lot of our residents. If we don't enforce traffic, it won't be too long before speed limits aren't going to make any difference. People are not going to pay attention to them. And with the attitude of a lot of drivers today, it's already dangerous enough. So traffic enforcement is something that you're always going to want. The majority of the members of the community are going to want it. And it's important to their safety and the safety of the kids, especially when we're talking about school zones. But we're going to do everything we can to make sure that if the numbers aren't down to what the formula says they should be, and again, the formula just doesn't work with the transient traffic and with the fact that there's other factors that play into this besides demographics. That the numbers will be some in the area where it should be that the community is comfortable that we're doing what we can to make sure that we're not stopping people due to racial profiling.
Yeah, Dale, I just want to clarify, when you say transient traffic, I just want to clarify with the listeners that it's traffic that there's several areas in Webster Groves where traffic moves through from other areas because we have Elm, Brentwood Boulevard, Laclede Station Road, and of course I-44. But those are fairly large thoroughfares that actually pass through the city, and Big Bend Boulevard as well, on traffic coming from the west. So, you know, that's that. And is the number of resident stops still only about 12% of total stops? Is that number holding?
That number is about the same this year as it was last year. It's right at 12%. I mean, and the other thing, again, which we talked about, is social economic. You know, being able to afford to keep your license plate it's current, your equipment current on your license, on your car, and also factors of things that really we don't know about, what causes, for instance, more male drivers to be populated on here than female drivers. There's just a lot of other factors that go into it, so that the only way we could get it down and it would be illegitimate is to say, once you stop this many of a certain driver, then you can't stop anymore with another driver. I mean, that's not something I think that anybody would want to see, at least hopefully not.
Is there a way that they can do a statistical analysis to see what are those factors? I mean, how did you tease out the LPR as a factor? And how can you find those other factors, and how can we discuss that?
Well, the T's and the LPRs out really is kind of like an Xbox.
Right.
Goes in and what comes out, there really isn't, there's no explanation for it. So the only way to determine it are looking at it is you can look on the screen here. The numbers went up exponentially after the license plate went especially. So we made the assumption that that was probably one of the big factors. So when we took the one LPR out, and when we reduced the traffic enforcement on the highway, it brought the numbers down considerably. So we think, again, it's kind of like an Xbox. We'll see what's going in and what comes out. There just isn't there's no good statistical method for figuring out what's in that box and what's causing things to happen when they come in and come back out.
There's no other research into this elsewhere?
Not that I'm aware of. If somebody can come up with a legitimate tool to actually show an analysis between all those points and what causes it, you're going to make $1 million, because everybody would like to be able to see it. The only way, I mean, this is a basic tool that was arrived at with Scott Decker, who was at UMSL at the time, to do it on demographics and the formula the way that it should come out. Again, I don't discount it. I think it's something we should look at. I think it's something we need to be concerned about, obviously, and I'm willing to work to try and get that number down. But demographics is not the primary factor in traffic stops. There's a lot of other things and a lot of other reasons for traffic stops. Having said that, I think last year we only stopped 197 minority residents. So that's probably about one every 2.5 days. I mean, if there was racial profiling going on, we'd see a lot more activity than that. I mean, I hope that's something that makes sense. I mean, again, there's no way for us to disprove it just by looking at the numbers, but looking at the different factors, you know, again, by where the enforcement is, the license plate readers, you know, speeding based upon radar. When you look at radar, which again can't detect a driver, just like the LPRs, you're coming up with the same kind of numbers. So again, we want to do everything we can to get the number down where people at least don't feel too critical that it's as high as it has been. I think that's definitely a legitimate concern. But the only way we could get the number down to what the demographic is on these formulas is to do things that are illegitimate. And I hopefully, again, that's something that the community would expect.
So Chief, those LPRs, they are like automatic readers for license plates that might be expired, or there might be a warrant out on that. Is that right?
That's correct. For a warrant or in St. Louis area, it's that we also have warrants. So if someone doesn't appear in court for a traffic violation or did a shoplifting or leaving the scene, is on probation or whatever, and is violated probation, a lot of different things, then they'll get a plate hit on that plate. And again, it's a disparate number from minorities that the LPRs get those hits on.
Right. But then would that maybe overlap with something that I think we're going to be talking about a little bit later, but also that we talked a lot about last time, which would be like systemic issues that influence racism, or systemic things that influence, like what race relations are in general in our country, right?
Right. Well, again, I won't disagree with that.
Yeah.
LPRs and a lot of the criminal justice system are disparate for those reasons. And again, I think the LPRs have legitimate law enforcement use, but in this case, because of what the results are, it's something that we've decided, and I think that you would agree on, that we're not going to use them because it does disproportionately affect minority populations.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I understood what that mechanism was. So thanks.
Thank you, Dale. I appreciate it. Which is a segue into our next discussion, which I put on the agenda as the discussion of implicit unconscious bias, systemic racism, racism in general. And I felt it was critically important for this board to look at this. And, when we developed the condemnation statement, toward the bottom, it says, as a board, we know systemic racism shapes our experience as Americans. The board commits to anti-racist work as it pertains to the relationship between law enforcement and the Webster Groves community. Making that statement, I think it was very important for us to understand that I don't know a lot about the subject. There's a lot of information out there. I provided a lot of information to you. Katie provided information to you. And after the meeting, I reached out to Pastor Jeff Moore, who has done training in the area of implicit bias and anti-racist training at his congregation. And I asked him if he could provide some information about his training. Is there a person of color that is training with him? How many times has he done it? Information about the training itself. And he and Sarah Riss met and then put together the information that I sent out on Saturday. And it was a ton of information on Saturday, because I think it's so important that we educate ourselves. And as I said in my email, it's the beginning of an educational journey. Katie knows a lot more about this than anyone else probably on the board. Scott, you might too. But I don't. I'm fairly ignorant about it. And then I want, because if we're going to be successfully engaging with all members of the community, I think we need to have sufficient training in order to be able to do that. The information that Katie sent out on, don't talk about implicit bias without talking about structural racism. So wonderful writing about, what it is, what it means, what historically it's meant. There were a few items that I just want to read to those that are listeners. It said, we believe the work we need to do begins on the inside of ourselves, inside of our own organizations, and in our own communities. We offer the metaphor of a window and a mirror for increasing our equity consciousness and understanding what is needed to take effective leadership for equity. Each of us needs to look in the mirror to notice how our particular life experiences have shaped our beliefs, attitudes, and biases about ourselves and others. And with increased knowledge of ourselves, we also need to look out the window to understand how racism, classism, sexism, and other forms of systemic oppression operate in our institutions to create systemic advantage for some groups, white, male, heterosexual, cisgender, etc., and disadvantage for other groups, people of color, women, LGBTQ plus people, etc., in every sector of community life. So I think it's something that we, at least my personal opinion is that we as a board, I would like to be able to engage in some kind of formal training on this subject. And then, Pastor Moore and Sarah was copied on it. But I know that Sarah Riss engaged with the educational equity consultants, I believe, to do training within the school district. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, they've worked with us several times with our leaders, and then they've conducted training for our new teachers and so on. They're really good, as is Dr. Kiera Banks from SLU. That was another name that was mentioned here. Dr. Banks worked with our administrative group this past school year, and I believe will continue this upcoming school year as well. And she's really good as well.
So the three groups that they provided was educational equity consultants, Dr. Kiera Banks at SLU, and then Crossroads. And those were the three, and they have Sarah and Pastor Moore have gone to these three groups or individuals to receive a lot of the information that they've then passed on in their training. So they thought it was important that maybe not they train, but maybe they provide us with a resource so that we can reach out and possibly receive some of the training. Now, that being said, we don't have a budget. And this training does cost money. So I think it's important that as a board, do you think it's important that we pursue this type of training?
I think it's profoundly important. And I personally, I think it's a great idea for us to pursue this training and to also put that out there eventually, that we are in a way making this part of our certification for this board, in my opinion. I also am curious to explore these subjects within my own field. We each have different fields that are dealing with this issue in different ways. It is definitely high on the minds of the medical community right now with the racial disparities and outcomes for COVID and the like, and what's coming from the CDC even today. So that I think it'd be interesting if we took from our various fields, what are the lessons learned from them, and share that with the board, and also undergo our training, which will help us in our own careers, and also as we serve on this board, and start to engage the community with this in view.
And again, my philosophy is not for us to recommend that the police department at this time go through this training. I think it'd be great, but it's not our responsibility, nor is our charge. That's something that the city council and the city manager really need to discuss. The city council needs to discuss whether or not that's an important element. However, if we go through it and we report back that it was a very positive experience and that it was an experience that improved our ability to engage with the community, then I think we have a better reason to say, yeah, I think this needs to be expanded. But I think we started.
I agree completely.
We as a city are going to start engaging in community conversations about equity and racism. And on Wednesday, we have our first community meeting. We are working with the school district, and we're working with Webster University and the North Webster Neighborhood Coalition to put together for the next couple of months real honest to goodness conversations with people. And it's a little bit different than you're talking about the implicit bias training. This is an attempt for people to just listen to what our Black brothers and sisters have to say about their life in this community. So, and we're looking, I'm interested in this Kara Banks.
Kira Banks at SLU,
Kara Banks, we're going to talk because one of our council members requested that we start with a kind of a clean slate of people that we don't know as facilitators and trainers. And so we're going to start looking for some folks too. I don't know what's going to come out of that. I can report back to you after our discussion on Wednesday.
But I mean, and Crossroads, according to Pastor Moore, Crossroads is a little more expensive and a little less local. So I think it would be better for us to engage in someone a little more local. But
see, that's the comment that we've gotten is no, that we need someone who doesn't come with local bias.
Interesting.
I also like that because I think, well, John Thomas probably can speak to this better than I can, but you know, there's a lot of synchronicity then between what the city council is doing, then what the school district is doing, and then what we would be doing. And I think that I like that. I think that these entities being on the same page is just better for our town.
I agree with you, Katie, and maybe this group becomes the if we have a wheel, it becomes the hub for the training. We'll see. That's good.
So, you know, I don't know what our next. I don't want it to just go away. I want to.
No.
Proceed with this and try to come up with a way that we can. I guess haste makes waste, but in this particular instance, I don't think that's the case. I think we need to pursue this as quickly as we possibly can as a group. Is that even possible, Mayor Welch?
To do this as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I mean, to actually, and for us to look at a possible trainer and actually engage in some training.
Without a budget, we'd have to talk about that in terms of a budget. What I really like to do is be able to fold this into our big conversation on Wednesday with our committee, and talk about how we can make this a larger community piece here. Then we might be able to better find some budgeting here.
Okay.
Kevin, do you have any idea what the cost might be on a per person basis?
I do not. As I said, I just, when I read our condemnation statement, I just said we are ill prepared to be able to meet that goal, and we need to meet that goal as a community. And I'm so glad that that you guys are going to be having that conversation. I want to make sure that it happens.
Oh yeah, it will happen. I mean, trust me, it will. Something's going to happen, and because we need the conversation, we need to listen, we need to understand, and we need to spend some time thinking this through before we make any policy changes. You know, we want long-term change, and long-term change means that you really have to think that through pretty carefully. We're on our way. We're going to do this. I will forward to Kevin and to others the proposal that has gone out for this, because it is a proposal of a couple of months of community conversation and engagement, and then policy change.
Kevin, I'm not trying to make homework for you, Kevin, but if you could find out an estimate of cost, that would be helpful too.
Yes.
Okay, I could probably reach out to all three of the groups actually. But the problem is their training. If you look at their websites and if you look at the information that they have, it's very broad.
Yeah, I understand.
Topics.
But I think if you indicated that you're a member of this board and that you were looking for information that would be involved in training, you might find that they would be willing to discount in order to basically train a board that's doing what you're doing.
Right.
So you're not a corporate entity, you're a governmental entity, you're volunteers, you're citizens who've come forward and you're giving your time. I'm going to bet you're going to find a fairly generous approach in something like that. So.
And I would like very much to talk with John Thomas a little bit about your training that you're doing at the high school, because maybe there's something that we can link into there that might serve us all better.
Yeah, so last year we engaged with Dr. Banks on a monthly basis, and at first it was just general training about implicit bias and social justice and coming up with a common language, common verbiage that we could all use. And then from there on, we broke into like different department groups or different work groups and devised a plan of how we could make things better for our student population. For instance, one of the group I worked with, one of our plans is to try to reduce the number of suspensions, especially of our African-American students and students with learning needs, because our data shows that we're suspending and disciplining those students at a greater rate than non-African-American and non-special needs students. So we devised a plan that's still being worked on. Unfortunately, COVID came along at a time that hindered, put a halt to some of the work, but we'll be re-engaging with that when the school year resumes.
Good.
Thank you.
So Dr. Banks knows our community, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I would recommend her. I have no idea what her cost would be, but she did a lot of work with the Ferguson group following those events from 5 years ago. So she's renowned in the area, and she does great work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, I wanted to put this on the agenda so we could start this discussion, so we could try to move things forward. Katie?
I do have a question, like from Reverend Hayes, from your perspective, is this frustrating to think about, like we're white people, are you feeling like, oh gosh, we got to get you caught up, or how do you feel?
I think it's a good idea. I think I spoke with Kevin earlier about that, even dealing with Jeff Moore and adult training they have. What I guess I would say American and I know what the expertise is dealing with African American, with what training, he may see things from pardon my the way I put it, but from white eyes rather than black eyes. Yeah. So I don't know what his training is gonna bring, because he made it, he see red while African Americans see blue. So I would have really hear what presentations are.
I can say one of the reasons why we're talking community conversations is because it pulls in those of us who are white to listen to people who are black and your experiences, which people need to do. I mean, we need to learn from our black brothers and sisters and not from each other, all of us that look the same. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. So Reverend Hayes, that's what, after I spoke to you, I reached back out to Pastor Moore, and that's when he and Sarah got together and sent this information with these 3 resources that they suggested that we try to tap into. So I mentioned to him that the concern was, and that's why I specifically asked the question, do you train, are all the participants in your class white? and you're white, so do you, are you training? And he said, oh no, I always have a person with me that is of color doing the training. So that's where we started that conversation. And then he and Sarah then met, and they provided the information that I shared with all of you all on Saturday on these 3 additional resources that they highly recommend. So that's where we are at this point. So I will try to do some homework and reach out to. Do you mean to reach out to all 3 of the groups?
I think it would be better to get a sense of what that cost might be, particularly if there's going to be discussions about budgets.
Jerry?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Or do you want me to wait until after you guys have your meeting?
Well, you'll have a better sense of the direction of the city after our meeting on Wednesday.
Right.
And that might help you a little bit, and it might help us with budgeting and a few other things. So I would probably wait until Thursday to do this.
Yeah, if I can get that information so that then I can ask the right questions.
Yes.
And I think that's important. And Katie, I may bring you in on it.
I can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. The next thing on the agenda was to review the survey for any additions and modifications. And I want to be frank with you. This survey, we've worked on this survey for a long time. And it doesn't look as, I don't know, effective as I thought it would because of all the things that have occurred. So I don't know. Maybe it's still a good tool that we can use for our engagement activities with the community groups, but I don't think it should be the main focus. I think that it needs to be I think we need to really think seriously about what agenda we want to have and what discussion we want to have with the community groups. Again, the survey may be able to provide some information that the members of the community didn't know before, and give people a forum to say, okay, how can we better engage with the community? But beyond that, I think the conversation needs to change just a little bit because of everything that's happened. Do you all agree?
Yeah, I agree that it could just provide some early discussion points when we go engage. That's the way I was looking at it, is some opening questions just to get the conversation started. And then I'm very curious to listen to the points of view from all the various groups and see what questions they think would be important for us to be asking, engaging, thinking about, and what have you.
Right. So
The thing is, if we go and do this with a couple of groups, kind of like a test balloon, and if it doesn't go very well, if people are frustrated with the questions, or we can learn from that and modify as we go.
Right. Okay. What I would like for you guys to do, because we're approaching almost 2 hours. What I would really like you to do is I sent out the questions, and I would like you to respond by either marking some off, adding some. I think I added a couple, and come back. I mean, I reached out to Dr. Bonner at the First Baptist Church. I had a wonderful meeting with him on the stakeholder meeting for the city manager, and there were Farrell was on the call, and Dr. Bonner was on the call, and I can't remember everyone else, but that's my first time that I had ever met Dr. Bonner. So I called him and I reached out, and then he called. He to try to find out is there someone else that we need to connect with in the North Webster community. And he said, no, I think the North Webster Neighborhood Coalition is the best group to engage with. So he gave me Emerson's contact information, who contacted me. And then Emerson provided me with Lewis Davis as the contact person. So I think Mr. Davis is going to be reaching out to me, and I'll talk to them about trying to get something set up. The problem is, I think that not everyone has the Zoom capability, and that we really need. I think this is not going to be as effective through Zoom as it would be face-to-face. And I don't know, when those guidelines can change so that even if we mask ourselves, that we can at least social distance and have this discussion face-to-face.
Kevin?
Yes.
If I can, just briefly. I agree. I'm not quite sure when the restrictions are going to be lifted either, but we don't have to meet in the police conference room. The council chambers is available. There'll be plenty of room. As far as a Zoom meeting, at least for the board to meet and maybe a couple of invited guests, that you're talking about, so that we could do it in person there. I mean, I would hope probably by September, but anyway, I just want to offer that up, that you can meet in the council room and still have the audience participation via online.
Okay. All right.
Well, should we be asking the leaders of these groups how, meeting with them in small group, for example, me meeting with the diversity coordinator at Webster University and a few other contacts I've made, and then having them advise us how in their group best to reach them. And that can be done within the context of the social distancing in very small meetings.
Right. I mean, the ones that I sent out, and I put some in bold, for no other reason as if we discussed these in the past. So I guess the first charge is that you guys get me back what surveys that you think what survey questions, and we're going to finalize that. Okay. And we're going to finalize that by the next meeting, period. That we're going to do it. Then I think we look at these, and do you agree that these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups that we initially start with?
I think they're a good place to start, good groups to start with.
Let me, Jerry, I sent out an email with them with the survey. So I will read them. It's the Old Webster Trade Association.
Yeah.
The North Webster Neighborhood Coalition.
Right.
The Alliance for Interracial Dignity. And that'll be our second meeting with them. So we can, those that attended the first one, I wasn't able to, but those that attended the first one, we can pull our notes together and expand that conversation.
Okay.
And then the Webster University group, and Scott, you were going to reach out to the diversification person there.
Yeah, I've got a couple different contacts there. So
I'd like to make a little plug for the high school. Yeah, I see the high school down there, but I kind of like to make a little plug to add them to our top tier list. Like, I don't know, it's a leader groups, but I don't know, John, if you think that would be like, if there's a diversity and inclusion group or a student council. I know there's a student council, but I kind of like to plug for some youth to be involved quickly.
Yeah, there's a couple groups we could probably link into at the high school. There's a student council, there's a principals advisory group. So yeah, those are the two that come to the top of my head, but there's probably some others that we might be able to tap into.
I just think it's important to include the youth.
I might also suggest the Rotary. I think they're meeting by Zoom. That's a really large group of professional folks. And, in some of these groups, you might get 10 or 15 people. With a Rotary, you might get 50.
Okay. Can you provide me with the contact person?
Mhm.
I will contact them. But one thing, is there any way, and this is a Neil question, I guess we can post the meeting, but is there any way that in between our regular monthly meetings that we can have a work session? You're muted.
You're muted, Neil.
Hi.
Okay.
Sorry. I had a dog that was howling at an ambulance that went by. I didn't think you wanted to hear that. So yes, you can have a work session. You do have to post it, and you do have to keep minutes, but it's not something that necessarily is inclusive. Okay, it can be a work session as long as you're posting it and keeping a record on it.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you guys opposed with having in between, or I don't want to wait for a month. I really don't. Is there a way that we can have a work session sometime toward the end of this month? That we can hammer out, because one thing I want to know before I actually contact, I want to contact these individuals and say, we are working on a process of engagement, but I want to be able to talk to them about what topics we want to discuss, what agenda we want to present, in addition to the survey. Who should be on the panel? All board members, a few of us. Do you want me to attend all of them? What leaders in the police department? The chief, Captain Spears, Captain Perks, Officer Bell. Do we want just an officer there? Because part of this is engaging the police with the community. How can the community better know the police, better get to know the police? So anyway, think about all that. So I'd like to schedule a work session.
And so Kevin, just so you know what that would look like, you would post it as a work session, and it would get posted on the website indicating it was there. People could call in and listen like they've done here, but they wouldn't participate beyond that.
Okay.
Okay.
Is everybody in agreement on that we need to do that?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we got to get moving, like you said.
So I'm thinking at possibly either the 28th or the 30th. I hate to do it on a Friday. The 28th or 29th.
The 29th is going to be best for me. The 28th, I would not be available.
The 29th is a Wednesday.
Wednesday is usually my Bible study.
Wednesday night, the 29th.
Yeah.
That works.
That's a Bible study for you, Reverend Hayes?
Yes, 6:30 to 7:30.
Okay. I'm not opposed to meeting if you don't mind, I'm not opposed to meeting can anybody meet earlier than 6:30? Or would it be better to meet at 7:30? I would expect this to be no more than an hour.
I could do 7:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7:30.
Okay. Is it necessary? I mean, I don't want to exclude you, Mayor and Chief, but do you want to be involved in the work session as well?
Oh, sure, of course.
Okay. Dale?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I mean, I understand what your agenda and everything is, so I probably wouldn't have a lot of input into it, but in case you do have a question, I think it'd be good for me to be there just in case.
Well, I think that's important that you identify whether or not you think what member of the police department should be on the panel and start thinking about that.
Well, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea, and again, it's up to the board. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea to switch that up just a little bit. I mean, you get a little bit of different perspective with the different groups. But I certainly would like to be there myself, and certainly one of the captains and Detective Bell if he's available.
Okay. All right. So right now, the 29th at 7:30. And we can and then essentially complete items 12 and 13 on that during that work session. And that way we're ready then to make the contacts and move forward. Do I need to make a motion that we do that, or do we just do it?
No, you don't need to make a motion. Just do it.
Okay. Last item on the agenda, I did get one remark from a visitor, and I would like to read the remark. And this particular individual said, "Dear committee, 4 quick ideas from a 20-year resident to help you make progress. There is a simple and profound truth that goes, communities move forward at the speed of trust. No trust, no progress. It's that simple. And trust is not given, granted, or bestowed. It must be earned, built, and continually nurtured. In short, without trust, we have nothing and go nowhere. So a fundamental question is, how can the Webster Groves Police Department and the greater Webster Groves community earn, build, and continually nurture trust between them?" Chief Curtis and I exchanged some great email thoughts on this subject last week. Personally, I am not in favor of defunding the police, but I am in favor of going through a very positive, constructive, and hopeful process of blowing up the current law enforcement and police department model and rethinking, reimagining, redefining, and reinventing the model into something changed, improved, and better for both the department and the community. One such idea stems from my personal belief that one of the world's biggest problems is that while we are becoming increasingly connected to each other technologically, we are correspondingly becoming more and more disconnected from humanity and from building real, meaningful human connections, which hurts trusts. So this idea borrows from the classic cop behavior of walking a beat and the personal knowledge, connections, and friendships he would build with the people he patrolled and protected, which resulted in greater trust on both sides. Finally, I have never liked the name police. For one, it has the word lice in it. I'd much prefer a new name that communicates the primary role, benefit, and value the department provides to the community. And for me, the choice is easy. As a kid, I loved Wyatt Earp, who said that he was not a U.S. Marshal or a lawman, but a peacemaker. In fact, his gun of choice, the Colt 45 revolver, was also called the Peacemaker, and his enduring goal to make and keep peace in the Valley. I can live with that. Peace, and then the individual's name. I just wanted to read that remark. It's the only one I received. And we discussed the idea of the policemen getting out of their car more. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, most people are in their house, right? And when they are, they're out walking around, and we have to have social distance, and the police officer wouldn't be able to get very close to introduce themselves. So this COVID-19 has presented a lot of issues that we have to overcome, but I think it's something that we can put on a future agenda and discuss maybe a way that the police can better know the community and the community better know the individual police officers. I always try to introduce myself when I see a police officer. Last time I did it was with Officer Jordan, and he's brand new on the police force. So I think he's been there 8 months, but he was a wonderful person to engage with. So I think the community needs to know their police officers more. So that's where I'm going to end it. Any questions or comments?
No.
No, I think I'm losing my light, so.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you at 7:30 on the 29th.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Beatles song.